Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. Now we have a double. Not only is it one of my favorite episodes of Season 3, it's one of my favorite of the whole show, and that, of course, is Ray Home Alone. It's always fun when I get to talk about these episodes that were in my top 10 video. This is one that my opinion on it still is about the same as in that one, so if you've already watched that, unless you just want to watch me do this off the cuts for you know what, you could skip it, but here we go. Another Tucker Cawley episode, but Ray also joined in on the writing process along with, forgive me if I butcher this name, Tom Caltabiano. So we got 3 people in here. You can definitely tell Ray was involved in this because of the sincerity with his character when it comes to being alone. As you can tell from the title, Ray is home alone. Debra took the kids to go see her parents, so she's only in the opening scene. Based on how it's shot, I would guess Patricia Heaton was still pregnant at this point. They probably filmed the previous episode next, and then she just happened to be on maternity leave right there. There's a couple times in this season where you notice that episodes are aired out of the order they shot them in. When we get to the end of the season, a couple weeks' time, and I got to bring up Peter Boyle's unfortunate heart attack, I have to mention the episodes he's not in because there's 3 near the end that he's not going to be in. This is not one of them because you cannot do this episode without Frank, so it's a good thing it did not happen at this time. I mean, heart attack is bad in general, but I cannot imagine how this episode would have gone without him. They might have had to postpone it until season 4. Well, Debra's gone. Ray's having fun at first. He's hanging with the guys. He's hanging with Gianni, Andy. We get a Doug cameo, and this is the last time we see Kevin James on the show. His 8th episode in his 2nd appearance as Doug. After this, he goes off into the ether, off filming his own show, King of Queens, which I'm sorry, as if I record this, that I have not gotten around to reviewing the crossover episode, just timing and everything. Maybe if I feel like it after I'm done recording this, I'll sit down and watch it. See if there's anything fun about that one other than the one moment I've seen in passing on YouTube. Well, they all leave, and Ray's home alone. And he doesn't want to be home alone, which you can kind of understand. We've seen in the past that he is kind of a man-child at times, and he has also had at least one other person in the house his entire life. When he was living across the street, he at least had Marie or Frank there, maybe Robert if his shift was different. Ever since he married Debra, he's always at least had her or the kids with him. So being alone is a little weird. He tries to combat this once everybody leaves by going to Robert's house, and he interrupts Robert on a date. And you can tell before Robert even opens the door, it's like, oh, he's mad. And he wants to strangle Ray because Ray chased the girl away. It's like, you just interrupted Robert getting lucky time for your own selfishness. He does get some advice from Robert, and he tries to go home and fall asleep, but it's not working. Because of him being alone, insomnia is coming up on him. And he's trying to play it off as best he can, but he can't. He tries a lot of the other methods, including watching Discovery Channel, but since it is a special involving lion hunting, it doesn't work. Before he tries Discovery Channel, we see him sitting in bed. He's all like, oh, what's that noise? Every single noise in the house is freaking him out. That was something. Now I can't hear the murder. So if you've ever listened to the Iron Maiden song Fear of the Dark, that explains a lot what's going through Ray's head at that point. So what does he do? Given what we've seen Ray done in the past, you all know what he does. He goes across the street to his parents' house. Now, you think, they're probably going to be asleep. He's going to wake them up. Nope. Marie's already up, kitchen lights on, and she's making tea for Robert. And this scene is delicious to see the brothers lambast each other, squeal on each other, get into a little argument with each other. And the way that Ray plays this off when he sees why Robert's there, he's like, oh, really? That trademark grin that he breaks out every now and then and altering his voice into a bit of smugness. Robert is having the same issue. He does want to be alone there, even though it's like he lives alone and he has a dog, so why would he be afraid that night? Maybe he didn't want to sleep alone that night. Maybe he just wanted to hang out with people that night too, like Ray did, but for a different reason. Well, they go there, they start talking, and we get a little bit of insight into how their childhood was. I mean, we see a little bit of it already, seeing who their parents were. But we see a little bit more into that. That they were played against each other by Frank in order to get material for scary stories, like Ray being afraid of leprechauns. Which is just kind of funny. It's like, oh, it's a good thing the movie Leprechaun wasn't around when Ray was a kid. I can just imagine him, Frank looking at him. You know what we're going to put on today, Ray? Oh, look at the little one. He wants his gold coin. Ah! Probably one of the few people who was legitimately afraid of the Leprechaun movie. Well, Robert was told stuff like Ray being half spider. And when Peter Boyle enters the episode, he's having fun with this stuff. In addition to Frank scaring the crap out of his kids using the ammunition he got from them, we see that both of them were very willing to give ammunition in order to make sure the other one was scared. Part of this is Ray admitting that he, for lack of a better term, framed Robert's bedwetting. He would just throw a glass of water in there to get Marie to come to him, which is another thing with this. We just see how much she coddled them, and she loved it. Which, when you hear this, you're watching the episode, you're thinking, that explains a lot. I mean, there's a lot of moments in this show you're like, that explains a lot. But that one, you look at them, you see how the boys are, you see how they act in later episodes, and even episodes we've seen already, and you're like, that explains a lot. But this episode, they don't delve too deeply into the psychology of both of these parents and their interactions with the kids, but it's just a little bit there that the audience, you're like, alright. But that's not the big part of this episode. The big part, and the part that I really love about this episode, and it's the moment whenever I think of this episode it always comes to mind, is the end part. Where Ray and Robert decide, you know what? We're going to get some revenge on Frank. They think, okay, we're going to sneak into his closet, we're going to jump out. But he turns the tables on them. Because they're stupid and they're talking too loudly in the closet. Now, even as a kid watching this, I was like, really, be quiet. I know part of that's supposed to be the suspension of disbelief that they're talking, where they're supposed to be in like, they might only be talking like this loud, but since they're in such close proximity, they can hear each other. And they're only talking in their full volume, so the audience can hear it in the microphone. It's not supposed to be, because something like this is not going to travel well on set. That might be the case, but even then, I think Frank can still hear them with how loud they seem to be talking and just how much they're talking. Even if he walks in, he can be like, there's also the possibility that he saw them go in there without them realizing it, and he's probably thinking, oh, they're going to try and scare me, eh? And then he scares them back. The line he says that it still makes me laugh now. You know what we haven't done in a while? Just the way the audience reacts and the way that Brad and Ray play off each other. The chemistry between them in the scene when they're realizing what he's referring to. And then the sound he makes on the other end of the door to really freak them out. Oh, yeah. It's like, oh my god. Stuff like that is why Peter Boyle was a legend. And why it's a shame he never won an Emmy on this show. Because you contrast that with when they come out and just see him standing there. That's what really makes a comedy of this end scene. And as he puts it, you mess with the bull, you get the horns. You want to try and scare me? I'm going to scare you back. Ha ha ha. Out of all the Season 3 episodes, this is one of the few, if not the only one, that does not include the da-na-da-na intro. And I think part of that is for runtime. Because even in syndication, I don't remember seeing it. And then even on Peacock, it's not there. But there's one scene that I never saw until I watched the DVD for the first time, and that's the end joke. Because in syndication, the episode ends after Frank's line about scared myself a little bit, which I think is a nice final moment to end on. And, gets one more scare out of them, but then he's like admitting to himself he scared himself a little bit with his joke. However, the true end of the episode is fitting as well, because it ties into the opening joke, where Ray is writing a journal of injuries, because sometimes he doesn't remember where he gets these bruises and all that, so he's like, alright. Which I can understand, like, if you were injuring yourself in such a, odd manner to where it's like, that didn't really hurt, and then you're like, where did that come from, and it just slipped your mind. Having that journal, you could be like, oh, that's what happened. Still light to medium. Well, to tie into that, because of how much they're moving to get out of the closet when Frank does his "oh yeah" in his tone. He hurt himself, lightly rated. And so that's in the journal. And because she wants to see what Ray got up to while she was gone, Debra takes the journal. So I have to amend what I said earlier. This is one of 2 scenes we see her in. By my earlier statement, in the syndication version, and it's the only time we see her. We see her in the end. I feel that they probably filmed the scenes back to back, but not really much online about it. But she reads it, and the look on her face says it all, like, you want to tell me what happened? And Ray just ends it with, long story. It is kind of a long story. I mean, why would you and Robert be in your parents' closet? And I can imagine that off screen when Ray does tell Debra, she probably laughs her butt off like, really? You thought you were going to get Frank? All in all, this is a very well written episode. The characters work off each other. There's enough for each of the 4 main Barones to do. Of course, Ray and Robert are the focus of it since, they have the most scenes together. I mean, there's a scene in Robert's apartment. There's a scene in the kitchen. There's a scene where they're getting into the closet. Frank and Marie, there's enough material for them to work with. We see both their approaches to parenting. A little bit of new stuff there. I mean, we've seen before how Frank has been with the boys. I mean, we've seen his good side too, but we've seen his little tougher side based on how the parents of his generation raised him. Marie, we see her loving approach that does border a little bit on suffocation, as we've seen in previous episodes. Here we see the part about it that they like, because in previous episodes and episodes coming down, we're going to see that her approach will cause some rebellion as well. But we're not going to get to that until we get to those further episodes. But you could see a little bit why someone would rebel against it, despite her going, I was a good mother. Next episode is also going to be centered around Ray and Robert, but it is one that I usually find myself skipping. And it's usually just because it involves baseball. I'm not the biggest baseball fan, and just the whole thing, just for whatever reason, it's never grabbed me in the past. So we're going to see if their trip to see the '69 Mets will actually grab me this time.